Hi, this week we're going to go ahead and look at regression analysis. And so in this short video, it's just an introduction, but we'll look at throughout the week techniques on how to use Excel to come up with a regression model, how to interpret it. We'll take a look at testing to see if it's statistically significant. So this week, our focus is on regression analysis. So simple linear regression is a technique that we use to determine the form of the linear relationship between two variables. And so we refer to one variable as the dependent variable. That's the variable you're trying to predict. And the other variable is the independent variable, and that's the variable we know, or the one we're going to use to try to predict the other. And so with regression analysis, we typically refer to the y as the dependent variable, and we refer to the x as the independent variable. And so the purpose of regression analysis is it allows us to estimate the slope and the y-intercept of a line that can be used for prediction. So the slope, if you remember from high school or even before, the slope of a line is the inclination of the line. You're saying, how does y change as x changes by 1 unit? You might remember rise over run, those sorts of sayings. So the slope is telling us about the inclination, and the y-intercept is telling us where does the line cross the y-axis. So we're going to use software, in this case Excel, to estimate those values so that we can come up with a regression line. So that's what this week is about. And so we're going to have to use some software to do that. So let's look at a very quick example. Okay, so in George's, it's a restaurant. The IRS believes that the wait staff are not reporting their entire earnings to the IRS. So this is a very small example. They would take more restaurants, but in this very small example, they take a sample of 5 of the tabs. Okay, they looked at 5 bills, and they looked at what the corresponding tip was. And so the IRS agent collected this data. Tab was anywhere from $24 to $50. The tip was between $5 and $9. And so based on this data, we're going to see if we can come up with a model for the IRS. So the first thing you have to do is say, well, what is my dependent variable? What's my y? And what's my x? So in this case, the IRS is trying to predict the tip. So that would be the y. That would be the dependent variable. And then what are they trying to predict it from? They're trying to predict it from the tab. So that would be my x. Okay, so if I was to use the data analysis tools in Excel to run the analysis, this is what our output would look like. And at the very bottom, you'll see something called coefficients. And it does not highlight these. I just highlighted them to look at. You'll see 2 values. You'll see the intercept and the tab. Again, tab was our independent variable. So here, if you look at tab, you'll see the point 1614. So what this represents is the slope. So we're saying as the tab increased by $1, the tip went up by 16 cents. So that may be a reasonable, maybe George's isn't a high-end restaurant, or maybe people are just not willing to part with their money. I had another word for that, but I'm being recorded, so hopefully you take that tongue-in-cheek. Okay, so this is saying each additional dollar, the tip increases by 16 cents. Then if we look at the intercept, That's where the line crosses the y-axis. And so it really doesn't make sense in this example to interpret the intercept, because the intercept represents what happens when x is 0. And our lowest tab was $24. We don't have any values close to 0. But this would say if someone came in, asked for a glass of water, not a bottled water, but a glass of water, so there's no charge, they would leave 96 cents on the table. So this just tells us where the line crosses the y-axis. So based on these two values, if we put them together, we get y hat is equal to 0.958 plus 0.161x. And so with this model, what someone could do is say, okay, the tab was $30. Let's put 30 in for x and see what we would expect the tip to be. And so the IRS could do that for all the various tabs, figure out what the value should have been reported, and is the restaurant really reporting the accurate tips. So this is an example. We'll go into a lot more detail this week, but of running regression analysis and its purpose. So we're trying to predict our dependent variable based on our independent variable, and we typically use linear models.